Hello, this is Bruce, and today we're going to talk about how to manage and manipulate the grids inside of LMA. So I have a series of sample log files that are loaded here, and as you click on specific measures up here in the top, you'll get the parameter list. And one of the options that you have is to look at, if you right click, you can create a grid of data. And that grid of data is going to look a bit like an Excel spreadsheet. So now you can just drag and drop new parameters into your grid. So now we've got 3 parameters, and at the top you can move them, so you just drag and you can see you could place them in different locations if you want to. So put them in different orders. You also have the option to do filtering. So if you click on the top, you'll get a list of everything that's in that column. And so if you only want to look at PCI 60, for example, we can click on that, and it'll just filter out for PCI 60, and you'll get a filter that's located down here. I can go back and show all. If you want to do show me all SINAR values that are, let's say, greater than 20, you can do the same thing on the grid. So now all the values here are greater than 20. I'll close that one as well. So you can do filtering. If you right click within the grid, you'll get a lot of different options. So let's talk about the first one, which is called display mode. You'll use this one quite a bit. Right now I have, there's 4 options and I have it set to the append option. So let's talk about what attribute means. If I click on attribute, now what happens is the attributes are located on the bottom tab, and the measure is on each column. That's going to become important if I click on a second measure, for example, and I go grab, let's grab PCI, let's grab RSRP, and let's grab SINAR again. So now the attributes are on the bottom, and the different measures are 2 columns on the top. If I right click and go back to display mode, if I click on the measure, now the measure is on the bottom. So we have 2 checkboxes here for each of the 2 measures, and those are here. So now I can look at the data for each measure in a single grid. If I right click and I do multiple, now they're sort of side by side. So I've got measure 1 here and measure 2, and then the attributes next to each other. And the last one that I started with was the append option, where if I make that one a little bit bigger, you'll see that the measure is now located here, and it's kind of ordered one on top of each other. In all cases, you have the option to export the data. And some of the options include, let me go over here so you can see it. So some of the options in the export is a CSV file. You also have Google Earth, so you can export the data directly into Google Earth, a KML file. Most of the time you'll do CSV with it. If I right click, there's also a couple options that you'll notice. One's called fixed column. And this one you'll see when I put on the coordinates. The fixed columns are these columns on the left of this big black line here. So now the columns have gone away, and I can bring it back by saying fixed column, turn on the coordinates. The index is just a numerical order, so 1, 2, 3, 4. But this call index, or CI, this is the index related to the call itself. So this is when call number 1 started. And if I scroll down a little more, here's call number 8. And this is where call number 9 starts. So you can sort them by call number here as well. So we've talked about the display mode. We've talked about some of the fixed columns. In the miscellaneous columns, this shows you some of the summary information, which is at the bottom. So you just saw what disappeared was the average and mean and max and sort of things like that. So there's the counts and the values there. Okay, so now the next thing we'll go ahead and look at is sending this into your favorites or grid. So at the bottom, the other two things I like to do a lot of, if you send it to a time graph, that's going to take that grid and turn it into a time graph view. I can go back to my grid, and the other option is to save it to a favorites list here. And when you save it to a favorites list, we'll say LMA Quick Start. That'll then stick it in a group here called LMA Quick Start there. So that's how you manipulate the grids. And we'll talk a little bit more in some of the future videos about time graph views and statistics charts.